So yes, everything Oksana said is absolutely right. It is an upgrade to the brain in a way. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. There are very specific things that cause gamma to manifest. We're looking at the mind mirror screen right now, and you can see that in this particular meditation, we're looking at a very high amplitude, 59 and 49 hertz, which is rolling down on into 38 as well. That is typically where we see these gamma waves in these frequencies. I ran into gamma when I was doing my training with Anna Wise in 2005. And for the independent study work, went and checked the brain waves of just about all of my people were meditators, advanced meditators, and healers and intuitives. And I saw a lot of activity in the old mind mirror. 38 hertz was as high as we could see, but I would see these bars that were extended like this, seemingly hanging out there all on their own. And I asked Anna what she thought that was, and she said energetics. And it is energetics too. She knew more about gamma than she told us. I ran across a book a few years ago by PMH Atwater. I think I mentioned this on the Self-Trainers webinar. And Anna mapped the brain waves of near-death survivors, and they all showed gamma. And so in that sense, in the sense that of being an upgrade from some spiritual energy, that is absolutely true. Something does happen to people who have near-death experiences, and then they come back and they are upgraded with these higher frequencies. But other things can cause it as well. Let's see, here's another of Oksana's. This is more the mind mirror summary. And you can see that here in the mind mirror summary, she's got more beta, more gamma and beta than you would normally see in an awakened mind pattern, which is going to have gamma beta about to these amplitudes instead. Regular meditation can cause gamma frequencies to arise, and everybody who is a long-term meditator knows that. I'm just going to show you a few other people's patterns. So here's Andrea Grow with a lot of gamma over this level of theta, these amplitudes of theta. You would expect her awakened mind pattern indeed is there. So if you go deep down into meditation, here's Brandon, guy who owns a float tank company in Seattle, and he's done a ton of meditation. So regular meditation ultimately will develop gamma. It could take years and years and years before that happens. But the reason that meditation develops gamma is because attentional awareness, that is one thing that's really associated a lot with it. And all the neuroscientists like Richard Davidson, Wolf Singer, and others who have been really focused on gamma since Anna Wise's time and producing a lot of studies on it, they are saying attentional awareness because mostly they're seeing it in Tibetan monks and Franciscan and Carmelite nuns who, when they pray or when they meditate, have developed such a level of discipline over their mind's awareness and consciousness that they have associated it, therefore, with a disciplined mind. Similarly, compassion is another association of these high-frequency gamma waves. And they are assuming that because, indeed, when you are feeling love or joy, then you have the same spiritualizing effect, this upgrade situation that, that people report and experience. Here's another one. Looks almost like an awakened mind, doesn't it? Except the awakened mind would be more like this and not like this. So here's a woman who's a neuro-optimal therapist in Canada, as well as very strong intuitive. So the other thing that happens when you have high attentional awareness and compassion, and you have spent a lot of time in your lower frequencies in connection with this field, universal field of consciousness, again, getting the upgrade, is that you become very, very intuitive. And indeed, she is highly intuitive. Now, this one is a professional channel, Ghislaine Salafranc. I'm trying to get Ghislaine to join us, but she says that her English is not good enough, so she will join us at some point. She travels the world as a medium, and you can see, again, this high gamma. And now, what's interesting at this picture, and some of the ones we've seen previously, is that you don't see a lot of theta for that amount of alpha. And it almost seems like when people start to concentrate consciousness in these higher frequencies for intuition or for healing or whatever, that some of the theta loses amplitude, even some of the delta. What ultimately I've seen happen with the people that you've seen so far, who are the ones who have taught me about how this gamma works, is that the longer they spend in meditation and the more grounded they feel, the greater the amplitude and the greater the synchrony. Synchrony means that the gamma is integrated with the beta, as opposed to this first pattern we saw of Oksana's, where she wasn't in the meditation very much yet, and these amplitudes hadn't moved into the synchrony. Let's see, we've seen that one of Oksana. Let's look, here's another one of Ghislaine. It's on just on a white canvas. Same thing, not as much theta, ton of amplitude up here. And for Ghislaine, especially in the right brain, she has more amplitude in the right. Now, some people have more amplitude in the left. I don't know what that is about yet. At one point, I had a big aha. I don't have, well, yeah, I do. This one is Joel. Joel, who was with us from France, he's got more gamma amplitude on the left. So then the question becomes, well, why is that? And I thought, you know, maybe, and this is something that we can all look at as time goes by, maybe they're processing in that part of the meditation in the left brain. I mean, I can't think what else it would be but that. For Ghislaine, well, she's an intuitive channel. Joel, as you may remember from our self-trainer webinar, is a community builder. So he knits communities together internationally and really organizing, arranging all the stuff you would expect the left brain to do, whereas Ghislaine, being a channel, is operating on this more intuitive, spiritual right brain. But we can't make that generality yet, but it is something that we can look at. So it is a very different brainwave pattern: attentional awareness, compassion. A lot of people associate high gamma amplitudes with out-of-body experiences, and then we said near-death experiences. And so what are the effects? Why do we care about it? The main reason is because of the whole brain synchrony. When you see gamma amplitudes and the highest frequencies separated from the beta, not synchronized, what I typically have seen is that those folks are very, very vulnerable to and bothered by electricity, sitting at computers for long periods of time. But when they move down into their theta, they feel more grounded. And then the gamma starts to integrate with the beta. And indeed, that is the main reason that gamma synchrony and even gamma in general have begun to be more interesting to these neuroscientists. So when people deepen into their theta and the synchrony happens and they feel more grounded, and Oksana would be the first one that can tell you this, when she's meditating or just talking or anything and her gamma amplitudes in these high frequencies are buzzing, and a lot of people will report this as a buzz. I feel buzzed. And in fact, it can raise the heart rate. I've seen that on a lot of sessions. Their heart rate rises or the GSR readings rise. But the Oksana will go outside and swim in the creek, work in the garden. Most people who are running this high gamma, they have to ground. We can help them as practitioners ground during an awakened mind meditation, or just remind them, go down and in, deeper down and in, deeper down and in, and they get down into their theta and you get the synchrony. The synchrony is a very real thing in the brain. The gamma is a lot happening here in the frontal cortex. And when it synchronizes, like you see in this picture, a lot of noise there. Can y'all hear me over the noise? Okay. Then the whole brain synchronizes across lobes. All 4 lobes of the brain synchronize in both hemispheres. And then there's a synchrony that occurs across the frequencies as well. And we are absolutely looking at the synchrony right now. You know, as you know, the awakened mind is the pattern of unity, where an open flow in consciousness travels from the gamma in this picture into the beta. There's communication through the alpha bridge with theta and the delta. So what they're reporting is gamma synchrony is they're seeing it on PET scans and fMRIs and all kinds of things like that, and we're seeing it on the mind mirror. And then why do we care about it ultimately, that we have gamma synchrony? Well, I call it the high voltage brain power of the mega mind, because this is a person who's switched on. They're talkative, they're excited, they're laughing, they are experiencing high levels of creative flow, intuitive insight. They're just coming in really fast all the time. And because the brain is switched on. And because the brain is switched on, it's forming new nerve cells in the frontal lobes, in the areas of the intellect and the creativity, and also the hippocampus, which is memory storage and retrieval. And so when Oksana said that this is the quantum leap in human consciousness, it really is, because if you've got more brain power and more ability, more intelligence access, the ability to develop more and use more intelligence and your creativity, that's the quantum leap. The other thing Oksana mentioned is that there's a rewiring is sped up, and therefore inner healing and transformation is sped up because neuroplasticity happens at a faster rate inside the brain. I want to make a change. I'm running all this gamma. I want to make a change. Boom, the change is made. Gamma people are going to be big manifestors outside as well as internally in consciousness as well. So yeah, we love this gamma stuff. And I thought that I would show you something very cool here. I pulled up a session of my own that I mentioned in both the user manual and the self-training webinar. And this was a Gateway, a Monroe Institute meditation done a couple of 3 years ago. And so we said that attentional awareness, which is a beta activity, compassion, which is, we could probably make a case for a theta activity, and for those of you who see this as a hologram, picture of a human inside the brain being a hologram as well, you could say that it's the heart, compassion, you could say an alpha theta activity. If you are doing lots of dream work, which would develop your intuition anyway, that will develop your gamma as well. If you have a very strong and very deep spiritual connection, that will certainly develop gamma. Most of the time, we're going to see most people with a flat, very flat, 59, 49 hertz here. So in this session, typically I'm at, let's see, 2902, typically a flat gamma for me. And you can see it right here. I'm going to keep the attenuation set on 17 so you can see the changes and what causes the changes. So in the Monroe Institute meditation, what happens is that there are these binaural beats, and they are taking you through these focus levels. You start out putting all of your earthly cares into a little treasure chest, a box, separate from the outside environment that pulls you in. And then you imagine yourself expanding your field, and then you do some resonant tuning, and then they start to take you up to focus level 10, which for us is just a regular meditation. Focus level 12, which is about probably somewhere in here on this gamma amplitude window. You can see that my gamma amplitude was 0.5 microvolts to start with, stayed at 0.5, but then it started to rise as I went up these focus levels. And then it went bottomed out a little bit, and then it started to rise again. So what I want to show you here is the other ways that, which I think for us as mind mirror practitioners, even self-trainers, advanced self-trainers, is really important for us to understand. See if you agree with this. I'm going to show you what I think is proof of it. The other way, and perhaps the reason all of it works in terms of meditation being the main pathway to formation of gamma, is because when you go down into lower frequencies, which I'm certainly doing here, you can see on this dominant frequency, I had the typical high amplitude frequency, highest amplitude frequency is 10.5, the classic alpha peak. So there it is right there. But then I start to drop. The frequencies start to drop as I start moving down into a lower alpha peak at 9 hertz. And then, as I'm going to show you in a moment, this is 4 minutes into the session. I'll go back to 2903. So they're taking me, I told them Monroe Institute when I went there, I said, oh, you're taking us into Yoga Nidra. That's how you're doing it. You're waking up inside the unconscious mind. They said, well, we don't call it that, but that's what it is. So watch these low frequencies.
Wow.
Super high amplitudes in theta, high amplitudes in delta. So I think that what's happening for meditators, especially long-term meditators who are dropping their alpha peak to 9 hertz, is that they are starting to center their consciousness in theta and delta, and that's giving them the access to the field that provokes these gamma frequencies. Because what researchers are telling us, what they're saying now, and I have only seen it a couple of times, but it makes so much sense. They're saying that high amplitude theta and high amplitude delta cause gamma frequencies to arise and ride like an FM carrier wave, like a harmonic, a higher harmonic on these super low frequencies. See that? And so right now I'm at 3110, which is about, let's see, 27. Okay, So that's where these pictures are right here. And you can see the gamma amplitude is low here, but it's going to start to rise because the lower I go, then I start to resonate with those higher frequencies. And so let's take it over here to 3947. Don't you love this second timer clock? Must have been a gamma insight. I woke up with that idea one morning, and it is a big game changer for us because now we can just scroll. Okay, now the gamma frequencies are higher. Look at that. Higher amplitudes than we saw before. Still a lot going on down here. But the other thing that's happening, and I think this is just mind-blowing, so ultimately, to close that out, I think that what's happening is you go down to go out and up. And that's what's happened. That's how it works with consciousness. And why wouldn't it? You would be going down into your spiritual connection in theta, and then you would be going down to your personal unconscious, which is your connection with the collective unconscious. You go down, you get super quiet, and then you start to wah, 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 resonate with the higher frequencies in the field, and then these higher frequencies, you take them in, you're spiritualized, and that's just a funny little word of mine, you're spiritualized by them, and the next thing you know, there's big brain changes, synchronization, inner peace, unity, compassion, spiritual awareness, and the thing I love the best, an evolved mind pattern. Now, this is an evolved mind pattern at the bottom, but lately, in fact, I felt like a total dumbbell when I realized this. Well, duh, what is an evolved mind pattern at the top but high amplitude gamma? How about that, Helen? You know, I never saw it before. It just suddenly, I realized it. That when you see the circular evolved mind pattern, what you're seeing is these gamma beta frequencies joining up in a whole brain synchrony with the whole rest of the pattern. And for years, and I'll open up this up to questions because this is a lot to throw at you all at once, and we're certainly going to look at the healer pattern in a couple of moments. I just want to give this foundation to start with. Certainly, we look at that Lesh Scale 6, and it says access to intuitive insights, you see things in a new way, spiritual light. Every single one of those state 6 explanations or descriptions is exactly what the Franciscan nuns, the monks, everyone who has an evolved mind pattern, all of us who have ever tipped into an evolved mind pattern, we say the exact same thing, same descriptor. Well, I think this is why, because when somebody flares into a circular evolved mind pattern, and you'll see Franz the healer doing this shortly, it's because they've got these high amplitude gamma coming out here. This is Franz Steiner. He is a long-term Reiki healer who had an experience of spontaneous enlightenment years ago with a village woman who gave him basically a transmission of light. Boom. And then he's had several ever since. I did a session on him with Mind Mirror 3 several years ago in Washington. Again, he was teaching in Washington, and I had 2 mind mirrors and 2 computers and monitored Franz and another Reiki healer. But the question was always, wait a minute, what if? So I kept thinking, you know, I don't have an SEMG artifact window here, and I can't check. So maybe he was frowning, and that's why I saw that gamma, and maybe it wasn't real. So this September, I went and met him in Washington again, and it was real. And this is the session that we did. So I'm sitting over there monitoring. Luckily now on one computer, they're each hooked up to MindMirror 6. And a really interesting session. I'm going to show you a few things about it. So you see the red lights flaring. There's the SEMG artifact we can't trust when it goes above 5. This is Susan's brainwaves, Susan on the left and Franz on the right. I'm monitoring her right now at 20 microvolts and Franz at 17. But even if I take Franz out to 20, you can see that he already, at the very beginning, has more gamma than she does. This is the kind of gamma we would normally see. And actually, at this point, other than that giant alpha that she's got, no doubt the result of being a Reiki healer, if we were to do what we normally do as practitioners to watch patterns, because we're really looking at very often, I am looking at almost always, really. I want to see the relationship between theta and beta, because we, according to our awakened mind ratios, have got beta at a, say 1, alpha at 2, twice the size of beta, and then theta at 1.6. So 1 to 2 to 1.6. So that means that theta is going to be bigger than beta. Some people have so incredibly much alpha amplitude that if you move the screen around so that you could look at the totality of their alpha, then the theta would get so small, you see, that you couldn't see what was going on. So sometimes you have to let that alpha go off the screen. And we can do that a little bit with her right here. So you can see, let's see, he's at 20, let's bring him down to 15 so they're the same. So now they're both on 15 microvolts and you can really see the difference. You can see that Franz is just flared into this beautiful evolved mind pattern a moment ago. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, and he's flaring all over the place. She's got an upturned delta herself. Again, as a result of doing Reiki work and being connected to the field, she's also got a lot of theta. But from the get-go, he's got more gamma. And not just gamma in the top 2 frequency bars, but all the way down. And again, this says that that evolved mind pattern is a pattern that involves gamma and always have. We just never thought of it that way before. See, he's flaring here on the right and got a real strong pattern now. Again, look at his gamma compared to her gamma. So, of course, we can look at a session by replaying it frame by frame, and that's how we had to look at the old MindMirror 3 sessions. Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore. The first thing we're going to want to do is rule out SEMG Artifact as being responsible for anything we're seeing on this screen. So let's look at her left brain artifact amplitude. Well, some of the time she has got, if I hit the shift key where my cursor is and then left click, she's got some 4 microvolt, but mostly she's probably down here, shift, left click. She's really mostly staying at 2.5 microvolts, so that's not a problem. So we look at Franz's left brain SEMG artifact. And he does at times have close to 5. And the reason for that is because a lot of the time Franz was standing up with his hands over Susan, and some of the time he was chanting. So what I did with this session is to say, okay, what we need to do is look at only the segment that has the lowest discernible SCMG artifact. So I'm going to right click to go to display options and try to get a trend line. I'm just going to say for the data range 0 to 7. Okay, so now I can hit the down arrow. All right, so he has got some very visible peaks and valleys here. So what I did was I said, okay, let me see if I can get this down here so you can see the numbers. Yeah, that's better. I said, this segment right here looks like the lowest SCMG artifact in the whole session. This one's pretty low too. I could put a marker in here and then another marker over here and say, okay, that's low, kind of decent low, but this is definitely lower. And so when I analyzed the session and started to look at the two of them together and how they interacted together, I said, okay, this I can trust because there's not much SCMG artifact here. In fact, if you shift and left click, that's just 1. That's way below these peaks you see up here that start to bang against the 5. So if we only look at this one right here, and that's what we're going to do, we can say, all right, left click on this first marker, that's at 1445, and then we're going to left click on the second marker, and that's 1632. So let's go over there and look at his gamma, 1445. And I had some notes on the session. I was tracking the session. Drawing brainwaves, drawing his brainwaves. No, actually, I was drawing her brainwave patterns and writing down what he was doing. And so I knew when I looked at my notes that this is when he was standing above Susan and not chanting, and he did raise his hands a little bit, but it wasn't enough to give us this SCMG artifact of 5 that would make us wary of his pattern. So this is to do the summary, the analysis of this session. I said, okay, let's only trust this one, and am I 1438? I am. So now we can watch his pattern. You can see he's still got more gamma than she does, but her gamma has increased. Remember how it was flat? I'm going to show you the gamma amplitude windows so you can see that her gamma has steadily increased. She's got more now because he's been working on her with his gamma. There's a resonant effect that's took place here. So we're seeing lots of awakened mind flares, enough alpha, but also a beautiful gamma synchrony pattern when he's totally still. Really nice gamma synchrony. That one right there. There's another one, except for that 24 flare there. And again, we see this situation where the concentration of consciousness is up here, and all he was doing was praying for her. And it's not in the theta. The theta amplitude drops because the concentration is up here. Okay, and so you see this evolved mind thing where he's got a lot of rounding, and we're going to run into, in a minute, I'm going to scroll even further down into the session, and you're going to start to see a lot more evolved mind patterns. There's a nice rounding there with an awakened mind on the right. So this is this gamma amplitude triggering possibly from the top down or the bottom up. Who knows? Who can say it's just one consciousness? As Oksana has says, it's one torus. You know, there's a big, beautiful evolved mind flare on the right. But what's cool about this thing is if we look at her left brain gamma amplitude window, because they're both, you know, hemispherically symmetrical, so we can get away with looking only at the left. You could look at left and right if you wanted. And then his gamma amplitude. What we see is how they tracked each other. Let me see if I can move this down. Ah, good. All right, so we got to line the screens up as closely as possible. And then we left click and then right click to go to display options. We go to the trend line. Let's see, 6 microvolts is plenty. So for data range 0 to 6, and then the software always selects more than 6. You can see it selected 7. But then I want to use the same data range on her. So we're looking at the same thing. Again, the trend line, I mean on him, 0 to 6. And now that I've got them on the same scale of 7, what we can do is left click and hit the down arrow, and then left click and hit the down arrow. And now it's given us a scale of 3. So look at his gamma. So watch what happens with him. His gamma is high. Now some of that is because he's standing there moving his hands and chanting. But look in our segment 8 rather, when he's nice and quiet. Now, from my notes, I knew that that he wasn't. He was mostly standing around here. But see how her gamma's rising? No reason, no other reason for her gamma to rise. Now she quiets down a little bit when he quiets down. Her gamma goes up. So does his. His goes down when he gets all quiet, and so does hers. Now he goes back up. His gamma amplitudes increase at the end. She stays pretty solid. So I looked at this and said, I think they're tracking each other. There's a resonant effect here, where his higher amplitude gammas are doing something really interesting. Now, the other thing we can do to look at this pattern, we could certainly look at a mind mirror summary for the whole pattern. She's on sensors 1 and 5 for her. Now, those of you who know how the mind mirror summary works know that this is averaging all of her brainwave patterns throughout the whole session. So that obviously takes a little bit of time. We turn on the gamma screen, gorgeous awakened mind pattern. Beautiful, classic awakened mind pattern. And in fact, we put accumulate statistics on. For the awakened mind, she's got a 79% at training level 5, which means that at this training level allows her to deviate from the pattern. She gets a reward with only a 50% deviation from the exact ratios of 1 to 1.61. You can also see in her mind mirror summary that she's got an upturned delta, and we saw evidence of that during the session, didn't we? She knows how to go down into her unconscious awareness and how to connect with the field, which is what Reiki healers do. So this 79% reward,
excuse me,
bless you,
sorry,
at training level 5 is a really good score. But she also got a high score for gamma synchrony because of this rise. When she started to rise, this software said, oh, wait a minute. She hasn't just got the awakened mind. She's also got some gamma synchrony going here. Put accumulate statistics on, and it gives her an 87% at training level 5. which is pretty extraordinary. And so we do the same thing for Franz. Now, there's a little funny thing here where you can't, once you hit a mind mirror summary on person number 2, it won't bring up a training summary or a mind mirror plot. So if we wanted to see, and we do, his mind mirror summaries, we're going to just exit that, and we'll exit the summary plot. And so now we want to get an overview of the entire session for him. Mind mirror summary, he's on sensors 2 and 6. And look at his pattern. His average pattern is a whole different animal, isn't it? See that? Ton of gamma up here. Now, some of that we will say could be because of these spikes. And in actuality, there aren't that many spikes. I don't know if I kept this. Yeah, that's him. There aren't that many spikes at 5. If we zoom back out, really, you know, I'm being super conservative here. Only a few times did he spike above 5. So if we want to be not so conservative, we can say probably 98% of this gamma is Franz's. For those few spikes, probably 99.8. So you can see why his gamma affected her tiny bitty gamma beta that we saw to begin with. Now his training level, if we accumulate statistics, he's got a gamma synchrony of 79, 60. I'm surprised his isn't a higher score actually. I wonder why it's not. It's not on enforced symmetry. That's kind of weird. But still, 79% at training level 6, pretty extraordinary. Oh, I know why, except I just closed it. He's going to have more evolved mind flares, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So let's clear the summary plot. Shows him an awakened mind at 3. His gamma synchrony, heavy scores at 4. Even he's got some gamma synchronies at training level 3, which allows only 30%, well, I always get confused below 50. It allows, you have to have 70% attainment, or a deviation of only 30% at training level 3. So this is, I mean, nobody's at training level 3. Some people are scoring well at 4, maybe 25, 35%. Some people are a little bit higher. Most people are self-training at training level 5 and getting 70s, 80s. I've even seen a couple of people with 90s, scores of 90, which means they ought to be training at training level 4 if they're self-training. So yeah, I think that it's pretty clear that what happened was he transmitted this gamma to her. Yeah, and actually here we could, no, let's don't do that. Let's do this instead. So what I love about this mind mirror summary is that you can look at it for the entire session, or you can look at it for segments. So what I did, and I won't take up your time doing it right now. Well, actually, I queued this up. Let's see if I can find it. All right, there's us on Zoom. No, it's down here. It's on, yeah, here it is. On the Institute for the Awakened Mind website, created this new page under research. First, we've got Max Cade's papers, then we've got meditation research, which is studies that many organizations have done. And then created for this Steiner study, this Franz Steiner study, a new page called Mind Mirror Studies. We really want to see this page full of studies like this one. So his original study I did with him is called the Brainwaves of Reiki on the Mind Mirror 3. The current study we're looking at right now is got an article that's a summary about and tells a lot about gamma and what we've been talking about here. The second one is the data analysis, so that's what I want to show you right now. So I went through each one of those segments. So we just looked at segment 8 and saw that that's the lowest artifact. This is what we just looked at, her mind mirror summary pattern for the whole session versus his. And then, so transmission and chanting, let's see, oh, here's a segment summary for segment number 9 for Franz when he's doing a standing stillness. I'm sorry, that's segment 8, and then segment 9 where he's doing quiet words or chanting. So you see the difference. It doesn't have to interrupt. It doesn't have to be an SEMG artifact, but when you are articulating or chanting, you will see more amplitude. Because now your mind is working, right? Might be working with compassion and intuition and connection to universal awareness, but there is a difference in the amplitude. So that's why I went with section 8 of the study and said, let's just look at him when it's just Franz, and you can see he's definitely got this gamma synchrony pattern. This here just shows that's the awakened mind pattern, but you can see that she had a whole lot of evolved mind flares, as did he, throughout this session. And there's one of his evolved mind flares, a pretty strong one right there. And now she has got an upturned delta at the bottom with an evolved mind flare, same time he did. An even stronger evolved mind flare here. That's at 15:12 minutes, 15:27 minutes. Now she has picked up his evolved mind flare. See that? Rounding there, this kind of diamond pattern here. As his gamma rises and he goes into more evolved mind patterns, so does she. She gets the gamma and she gets the evolved mind patterns. We've seen his segmented summaries. Now this is a complicated one. Rather than take time to drag up all these segmented summaries, I'll just show you this on here. So I went through various summaries, segments rather, set them apart with markers, and for her, these are hers right here, her segments. Wait. Make sure I know what I'm saying. Yeah. These are the mind mirror summaries for Susan. And you can see the rounding. Check this out. Okay, there's her segment 1 when he's standing above or whatever he was doing. She's got this rounding. That's her. As a Reiki healer, she got the rounding for the evolved mind connection, or, you know, mind mirror practitioners, mindful of them, I can also say that maybe it's not just a spiritual connection for her. Maybe she's just going down into her unconscious mind and bringing up unconscious material that's flowing up, and that's the reason for the rounding, or the same, one and the same. Kind of the same pattern here, very small differences, same pattern here. But now she's got a little bit more delta down here, and by God, she's got more gamma up here. See the difference in the gamma? From between here, it's growing, isn't it? Her amplitudes are increasing throughout. There's kind of the same pattern there, except the delta's not upturned. And segment 7, she kind of goes back to her awakened mind pattern, but by the time we get to 8, boy, she's got some serious gamma then and the upturn, and by the time we get to 9 at the very end of the session, she's got the gamma and she's got the upturn. So look at the difference between segment 1 and segment 9. See that? And this segment, this session wasn't that long. It was like 18 minutes. So in 18 minutes, she grew the potential to not only be more intuitive and compassionate and attentionally aware and inwardly united, but she also grew that gamma that does the whole brain synchrony, which we're seeing here, and the neuroplasticity for the rewiring of her brain. Now, this is the same thing with Franz. He starts out now in a beautiful gamma synchrony pattern. This one, bigger delta. This one, I've keep him at 9 microvolts, but still bigger delta. It's actually going off the screen right here. Gamma synchrony, he maintains this pattern the entire time, except that at the end, when he stops talking and moving around, he's got more than he started with. Pretty cool, huh? So, you know, I'm not a scientist, and except for this, but if you look at the data here, I think that it's a pretty fair conclusion that not only does the recipient grow in consciousness during a Reiki healing and potentially any other kind of healing situation, but so does the healer. Got more than he started with. And indeed, that's what healers say. And if you've ever done a healing session on anyone, you know this. You know, I've done some Reiki sessions on other people, and I feel way better than I started out. So you can get 18 minutes, 18.46 minutes. You can go and look at this thing and read it all the way through if you want, and it, you know, it says detailed data analysis as I knew how to do. But as Oksana started out saying, the key, you've got to check this SCMG artifact amplitude and make sure it's real gamma, and then look at the gamma screens and, you know, see when the gamma increased, and if possible, if you're only working with yourself, you could be hooked up to the GSR and the BVP. Joel Mitchell is the first one I noticed this on, because he's got a ton of gamma. He was on here. He won't mind my talking about him. He was on the Self-Trainer Conference with us. And Joel has got a ton of gamma, and he first described it to me as a shivery, fluttery feeling. And what I noticed was that his heart rate sped up. The stronger the gamma amplitude, the faster his heartbeat. So these frequencies do arouse the body. And so when Oksana says, if you're running a lot of gamma, make sure you ground, you really need to ground because of the effect on the body as well. Gamma is very closely associated with Kundalini rises. And that's why Anna said energetics. So you want to make sure your Kundalini energies are beneficial to your body, rather than running amok in this high frequency, high amplitude gamma and out there on their own. And I tell you, almost everyone I've seen the high frequency, high amplitude gamma, and the people who were mostly having trouble with electricity, and I can't be around computers, I have to put all these little odd electromagnetic neutralizers on the computer. Those people are, a lot of them are vegetarians, and I'm not saying eat meat to ground, although that does work. But if you don't do that, it's really important for the sake of your heart, for your central nervous system, that the grounding does take place. We want to build it, but we want to build it so that what comes is higher consciousness integrated with our earthly beingness.